want to start it, Patrick?
We are ready to begin.
Okay. Michaela.
All right, you ready, Ethan?
I believe so.
Yeah.
You good, Michaela?
Yes,
Please
all
start.
set.
Okay, got it.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to a meeting of the Morrissey Commission. I'm David Moeller. I'm the Director of Planning at MassDOT, and I represent Secretary Monica Tibbetts-Nutt here. We're going to have a short presentation from staff, then we'll have a discussion of the commission members, then we will take public comments, then we will have a vote to submit the document to the legislature. We're scheduled to go from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, so please keep that in mind and make your comments succinct if you can, so everybody else gets a chance to comment. And with that, Ethan, I think you can start.
Yes. Patrick, I can't see the deck. Is it being shared?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, I can't see it, so I'm kind of flying blind here. Okay, so slide. So welcome, as David has already done. I can't see the slide run.
All right, I'll do this part, Ethan, while you try to figure this out. I can read these slides. So this is about the meeting notes and procedures. This is a virtual public meeting. It is being recorded. We can maintain, we may choose to retain and distribute the video, still images, audio, and or chat transcript. By continuing your attendance in this virtual public meeting, you are consenting to participate in a recorded event. All recordings and chat transcript will be considered a public record, and if you are not comfortable being recorded, please turn off your camera, keep your microphone muted, and refrain from chatting in the transcript box. Otherwise, you may choose to excuse yourself from the meeting, of course. Your microphone and webcam are automatically disabled upon entering the meeting. The meeting will be open to questions and answers at the end of the presentation. This is about Zoom. Drop-down menu, you can check your microphone and speakers. You can use your chat to ask a question or share comments. You can raise your hand. There's a raise hand function. If you're unable to access the internet or you're having technical problems, please call into the meeting at 312-626-6799. Webinar ID is 879-5958-1294. If you're having any trouble with the meeting technology during the presentation, please call 1-888-799-9666 and closed captions will automatically be generated by Zoom. So the first item on the agenda is a call to order. So I will, since we're virtual, I will call on people to introduce themselves rather than try to do that thing where we all popcorn around. I am David Moeller, as I said earlier. I'm the Director of Planning at MassDOT. I represent Secretary Monica Tibbetts-Nutt here. Representative Dan Hunt, are you here, or do you have a person representing you?
Hi, I am a representative for Dan Hunt. He is in the call, though. Yes, he's here.
Thank you. Councilor John Fitzgerald? Hearing none, hopefully he will join us eventually. Is Senator Collins representative here?
Yes, that's me, Haley Walsh from Senator Collins' office.
Thank you. Dave Mullen from the UMass Building Authority, are you here?
Present.
Thank you. Frank Baker, I believe, is running late, but are you here yet, Frank? I know he will be here. He said he might be 10 to 15 minutes late. Commissioner Brian Arrigo, are you online?
I'm here.
Chris Osgood, are you here?
I'm here.
And then Kairos Shin, I'm not sure if Kairos has gotten here yet, but I know he is on his way.
Here.
Oh, great. Welcome, Kairos. So
Nice
that's
to see
all. You too. So that's all the members have introduced themselves. So you can go to the next slide. And Ethan, can you see the slide
I'm all
yet?
set now. Yes.
All right. You can take it over then, Ethan.
Yep, we'll do. Technical difficulties.
No
Okay.
worries.
We're clear. Okay, thank you. Again, my name's Ethan Britland. I'm with Massachusetts Department of Transportation. I work with David. I'm the project manager for the study. This is the commission legislation. Just as a refresher, we include this in all the decks. It's just to sort of explain, why we are doing this entire effort. So next slide, please. And then we just have the commission goals in a graphical format. Again, we've shown this. It's we want to make sure we address multimodal mobility. Its climate resiliency is obviously a major component of this effort that we did. We've developed design conceptual alternatives, and we've also worked to identify any short-term investments over the course of the study. Next slide, please. So again, this was we added this in at one point just to help with the public process to explain some things, and so the commission's was to evaluate and recommend improvements. The study team's role was to present relevant background information. There's a lot of other things going on, and so this additional content is intended to provide regional context. So, next slide, please. So I'm going over the draft findings that we released as part of our public comment period. You've seen these before if you were at our meeting 7. We also had a workshop midpoint of the public comment period. So this is a refresher. This is what was published in the report. This is what we had said at the last meeting, and this is what we have shown at the workshop. So our key findings are that a redesign of Morrissey could help prevent significant flooding and mitigate with protection. We want to reconfigure Morrissey, modernizing intersections to promote multimodal transportation, obviously climate resiliency, safety placemaking. Environmental permitting is expected to be complex, not only because of the added climate resiliency aspect of it, but just overall large projects like this are typically complex. Any project is going to require significant coordination across various state, local entities. And I think most importantly, one thing that people have been mentioning and obviously feedback we received, this process needs to provide the key technical information to the Beeds Bridge, the K Circle, Columbia Road, and ultimately a Morrissey Boulevard project that would move forward. Another important thing we do as part of the study process is additional considerations. Things that can't be rectified, or even sometimes they're design or they're part of permitting. So things that we want to make sure that as this transitions from a conceptual planning study to project development, that these are things that are continue to be in the conversation, in the mix. And so, the coastal resilience measures, we've looked at a variety of different ones, but one thing we've heard is that we should focus on nature-based solutions, and obviously reintroducing the native ecosystems. But this is meant to sort of soften the infrastructure. So as it moves forward in project development, we should be looking at more green solutions. Obviously, we've heard a lot about the Seven Hill Yacht Club, and it is sort of out there in a location that makes it more vulnerable. It's not Morrissey, so we didn't necessarily design it that way in the concepts, but we understand that as project development moves forward, that's one thing that should be considered is the Seven Hill Yacht Club and how access impacts are considered. And then we are, kind of a snapshot in time. What needs to be carried through is to continue monitoring all the development projects, as well as the various plans and policies that are connecting. So, there's a lot going on and the landscape constantly shifts. And so project development would update a lot of the information, but it would carry forward much of what we've done as part of the study. The early scoping and project coordination with the Boston Water Sewer Commission, there's obviously there's a lot going on there with that could be coordinated with water sewer utilities. And as part of any large complex project like this, utilities is a major part of it. So early scoping would help to incorporate those elements and coordinate any other initiatives and projects going on with Boston Water Sewer Commission with a roadway project. Next slide, please. So those are our findings, which then sort of lead to what we are recommending. And we've identified short and long term. I think what's most important as part of what we're here today to sort of approve are the long-term recommendations. But we did hear our short-term recommendations often encompass things that as we're going through the study process, we want to be responsive to the public. So we try to fix things while the effort is going on. So while we can call them short-term, I sometimes call them immediate, but we also try to identify things that can be recommended in the near term while a larger project is moving forward. And so we heard a lot about sort of, is there a way to increase connectivity in the area, especially Conley Street, Point Norfolk, in advance of any kind of long-term recommendation. And we working with, let's say, the district offices or DCR in this case, because a lot of it's their jurisdiction, or the city, quick build improvements, lighting, something we've identified in the report as some additional lighting at locations. And there's some Preble Circle, there was the U-turn at Divine Ring. So these are things that we've heard and we've tried to incorporate in as part of short-term recommendations. And on the right-hand side are all the things that we had kind of incorporated throughout the process or that had come up as part of DOT or DCR initiatives. And ultimately, the long-term recommendation would be to, for MassDOT, DCR, and the city to initiate a project or phased projects, because I think this is the point at which, as a project moves forward, it will coordinate more closely with BEADS and K-Circle because they are actual projects as well, not in the conceptual process. So that's where those project development processes would either be combined, link up, phased. That's part of the next step would be to figure out how to put these all together, and that's a project development decision. And I think as part of getting a project initiated, that the respective agencies would need to coordinate on all those projects. So now I'm going to go over the comments we received on the draft report as part of our 60-day public comment period. Usually we leave it out on the street for 30 days, but we left it out for 60 days. We put it out there because we understand that we wanted to make sure we received as much public feedback as possible. And so I think here's a graphical summary of what we received. As you can see, it's a lot of what we've been hearing throughout the study process. East-west connectivity is important. There's concerns about U-turns. Obviously, transit improvements, bus connections are important, bus lanes in some of the northern area. Obviously, environmental concerns, that's part of the permitting. Dredging, we heard throughout the process and as part of our public comment period, dredging, which coordinate with responsible agencies, entities. Balancing of the modes, continue community stakeholder engagement, and placemaking opportunities, flood mitigation. And I think the biggest takeaway here is the last box at the bottom for project development. All of this feedback we've received is really meant to be incorporated into project development. That's the key takeaway. We need to take the next step into project development so that all of this feedback, we need to keep the momentum, bring this feedback into project development. And a lot of this information is actually design detail. It's not necessarily things that we do as part of our conceptual planning studies. But the important thing is that our study will provide both the technical work background and as well as the public comments we've received and documented. They will be used to inform the design process which has its own public involvement plan associated with it. So that was that's basically what we've received. We're at a point where we now open it up to commission discussion. I'm going to turn it over to David to moderate.
Thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Ethan. Are there any members of the commission who would like to say anything about the report, the findings, recommendations? Any questions about next steps or other issues? If so, please raise your hand so we can call on you. Maria Lyons.
Good
You're on
evening. I'm unmuted now. Thank you. I'm here representing City Councilor John Fitzgerald, kind of at the last minute, but I'm happy to do it for him. He sent me a statement to read.
That would be great.
Okay, it says, "Good evening, everyone. I apologize I could not be on the call tonight as I had a long-standing commitment at my re-election campaign kickoff. I do wish more heads up was given of the meeting so that I could have made plans to attend." And then he has a joke, and I'm not sure whether it's just for me or for all of you, but I'm going to read it. Also, what are you all doing here and not at my kickoff? He said a joke, of course. "I want to reinforce some concepts that have been discussed by myself and the community to be put on the record, given this is supposedly the last Morrissey Commission meeting. I have been in communication with the state prior to this meeting, and while I understand the process, I have to admit I do not think the results we will see tonight live up to the expectation of the commission. Not to say we did not make progress through this commission, however, I think myself and the wider community were expecting that at this point, the options for different intersections would be confirmed tonight, and that a more focused overall picture would come into view. As we transition into the development implementation phase, the phase where we will start to confirm some of those options, I would like to reiterate the following points for the recommendations. Keep 3 lanes. I know arguments about signalization improvement have been made that say 2 lanes will suffice. I urge the state to not make this mistake. If in the future the community has a desire to install bike lanes or lines, then it is much easier to add them in and reduce down to 2 lanes after studying how the new updated Morrissey operates, as opposed to putting them in now and realizing it's a disaster and spending more money to take them out. Making the resiliency berm into a multimodal pathway that allows the Greenway bike path to continue and give safe passage to bikers, walkers, and runners alike without potentially putting them in harm's way of cars on Morrissey. No wall for the resiliency berm. It should be a raised Morrissey Boulevard with passive activation amenities added to the berm. The bridge needs to not be a drawbridge ideally. Please continue to internally operate as if K-Circle is part of this plan. While I understand the politics involved as to why it was not, it is comforting to know it is all being looked at by the same team and the coordination is there. K-Circle is the key to making this whole redesign work. As for individual intersections, I will not go into each, but I'm sure you remember the meeting where we went through and voted on which option to entirely trash and which ones were the preferred for the community. Let's do our best to follow the recommendations we did through the straw polls on that night. That's all for now. Again, my apologies for not being here tonight, and thank you to everyone on the commission, MassDOT, City, and all the constituents of Dorchester, especially Maria for stepping up in my absence, that moved us to this point. Plenty of opportunity and work remains to get this to the final design. Thank you for the time. And again, that was from City Councilor John Fitzgerald. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lyons. Is there another commission member who would like to comment or discuss at this time? If so, please raise your hand. Chris Osgood.
David, this is perhaps more of a question than a comment, but perhaps following Councilor Fitzgerald's remarks, can you talk a little bit about what the next steps would be as a project moves into the sort of project development phase from the MassDOT DCR perspective?
Sure. So the next step, and I think Ethan sort of hinted at this, or maybe even said this, is the next step is that MassDOT will work with DCR and the city to put this project into our design development process. That will make it an official project for implementation. It'll be assigned a project manager from MassDOT. We work with the city and DCR, as I said, to start scoping out the design, hire a design consultant, start designing something that we can then take out to the public with actual designs for them to comment on. There's always in our process a 25% design public hearing. So there will be some time where there's not a lot publicly going on, but then eventually the public will be involved and we will take all comments and respond to comments. And then from 25%, it goes to 75%, and then it goes to 100%, and then it is advertised.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Are there other, Kairos?
Here we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you, David, for that explanation. I just want to ask, is that funding to taking the design of the roadways from 25%, then subsequently to 75%, and then 100%, is that sort of assured? Because I think fundamentally that's a big question. And once it gets to 100%, at what point does the project have to get approval? Does it have to get approval and assignment of funding through the TIP process?
So my expectation, and the answer is it depends, Kairos, right? So I'm not sure whether this would be a federal aid project or a project that would be fully funded by the Commonwealth. So if it's a federal aid project, yes, it would have to go into the Transportation Improvement Program at the time that it is, we are confident in its cost estimate and its schedule for construction. Otherwise, it needs to get into our CIP.
Okay.
So there's a process either way, right? So we won't put it in for construction till we're farther along in design. There is no funding currently in the CIP specifically for this design, but there is funding as like a giant, I shouldn't say giant because that's wrong. There's funding for a pot of funds for project development in the CIP, so that there's not specifically X number of dollars for a specific project necessarily for design. It's carried as a lump sum.
Okay, so thank you for that. I just want to make not an extensive statement, but just to say that we at the planning department who have been involved in this process from the very beginning and been represented on the commission want to acknowledge that there's been a lot of good work done, and that it's actually developed a good, strong concept for better Morrissey Boulevard in general, easier to cross, more resilient, and actually supportive of all modes of transportation. We want to make sure that we keep good momentum. And so to the extent that the comments made by the councilors, designee Mary Lyons, we want to recognize that the key thing is now to move from a study phase to an implementation phase. And, you know, to that extent, this relates to my earlier comment about funding. Now, the one thing that I would say is that as much as that we have participated in the process, we recognize that one of the commission's very stated goal of comprehensive planning relating to sort of the coordination that many folks who have participated in this process have raised of more comprehensive planning to really align the roadway design to the anticipated capacity that's necessary from all of the area development. That level of study, of comprehensive planning has not been done. And I recognize that that responsibility rests with the planning department of the city and not necessarily one that actually should be transferred over to the commission or or DOT or DCR. So I want to make sure and make a clear statement for everyone here tonight that the city is prepared to take on and fund that comprehensive planning. But one of the things, the contingent, I would like to make sure that that's contingent on the state's commitment of advancing the design of the roadways and also advancing the coordination between the design of the various parts of roadways, including K-Circle, which, as far as our analysis has shown, still requires a significant amount of coordination with the rest of the design of Morrissey Boulevard. So to the extent that one of the goals of tonight's meeting is to actually come to a conclusion on the study report that has been provided so far, I'd also like to make sure that the commission spends some time in providing the kind of context where the coordination of further planning together with the funding and implementation of the roadway design is linked. So those are my sort of initial points that I want to make, and I look forward to additional comments so that we can, if there's an opportunity to get into more details, I'm happy to do that, but would want to yield my time to other commission members. So thank you.
Thank you, Kairos. Other commission members, is there any other discussion or comments at this time? Haley Walsh.
Sorry,
Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Hunt. Go ahead, please. Yes.
sorry, just a question, and Kairos, come highly recommended from everyone I talked to, and my brother Jim says hello. So welcome to this process. Just by way of edification, we've been kind of working on this for the better part of 2 years in this commission specifically, and that you know, as it's a state road, it's the state design. It's a DCR owned in fee with participation and coordination with Mass DOT, and as in any project would reach out to the city for input, but the design and approval in that process is through the state process. Were you saying that the city were you talking about design of the adjacent area, or were you talking about design of the roadway?
So nice to meet you, Representative Hunt. And yes, delighted to be participating. And I know that I joined this process late. And what I want to clarify is that I absolutely understand and agree that the city is not suggesting that we take on responsibility in implementing the actual design and ultimate construction or reconstruction of Morrissey Boulevard and K-Circle, because they are fully owned and the responsibility of the state through DCR and DOT. What I recognize that the commission's charge includes comprehensive planning, because I think the notion that the roadway should be designed within the context of the growth and change that is occurring in the neighborhood adjacent to this roadway, the state-owned roadway, needs to be well coordinated. And
Sure.
that I recognize also, in spite of the best efforts of the commission defining the scope to include that comprehensive planning, that work rightly belongs to the city's planning department. So I'm here prepared to say that the planning department and the city will fund the comprehensive planning that relates to understanding comprehensively the needs of the community, Savin Hill, Dorchester Bay City, and Columbia Point, and coordinate that work with the stakeholders and the community. But I want to make sure that as the city makes that commitment of funding that study and putting, human power, human resource in, assigning our planners to do that work, that the state doesn't sort of not implement and advance the actual roadway design. And so what I heard from David earlier on is that that the state is prepared to put this fund the next phase of design. But I also think it's important because ultimately the state legislature can actually dedicate funding directly towards implementation. I would have to say that this project and the aspiration of redesigning and rebuilding Morrissey Boulevard is more than a decade old, long before the commission was created. And I don't want to wait another decade before we can implement the actual designs that we are seeing, and I think have had received pretty good support, even though some of the final decisions on the specific designs or design alternatives are still yet to be sort of formalized. So that's the point of my statement, is that actually make sure that the city will do its part, but this, you know, I would like to have the city not do this, and then the state then not make good on its commitment on advancing the actual design and ultimate construction of these roadways.
Got it. I mean, and you've been around for a long time, and we welcome you back and are certainly excited to have you in the post. And as you mentioned, it's far longer than 10 years. In 1980, there was a design that was close to 25% by DCR. That process was renewed in 2015. They had close to 25% design and funded for 19 construction between Bean Cooley Boulevard and the Beads Bridge. That was fully funded and ready to go for construction 19, 20, 21, that the Baker administration, because there wasn't full agreement, kind of pulled the plug on. The Senator Collins, myself, and Representative Beal, underneath the leadership of Senator Collins, put together this commission because DCR, as it is the owner and fee, care, custody, and control of the Department of Conservation and Recreation, had their process, did a public process, reached out to the city, had been in communication with the city and MassDOT, and then things kind of broke down. The legislature got together underneath the leadership of Senator Collins to create this commission so that everyone was at the table. Obviously, we've had close to 12 meetings over the past 12 years. And as far as funding, I'll say what the administration can't is that each year, as you know, we have 5-year capital plans for all of the various facets of government through the secretariats and then through them to their departments. Each year around January, we decide how much money we're going to bond out. There's a 1-year capital plan that's fairly fixed. And then there's a 5-year capital plan that's fairly loose. But once you get on track, you're kind of in a good place. The projected project cost from DCR that was fully funded in 2019 was, I believe, 41 million. It has been said in these meetings that it could be upwards of 250 million. That depends on many things, how much rise in elevation, where, and all of the above. But generally, you're talking 10 to 20% of that, whatever that number is, to get to a 25% design. But that said, I appreciate you taking on the leadership role and saying that the city is going to pay for it. I'm just kidding.
Say that I want to clarify that the city is taking on paying for the comprehensive planning to make sure around the roadway design. And I know that we're prepared to actually deploy that the consultant in the fall this year. So I think the key point is that we recognize the good work that's already been done. But in order to keep the momentum, I'm prepared to make the commitment of the city advancing the planning, but that commitment is contingent on DOT and DCR continuing to do this work, because I think that thank you also providing some additional historic context. I mean, when I left the city in 2015, we had been doing a bunch of work around there, and I did not know that there had been even earlier plans for, rebuilding this roadway. But in some respects, I'm happy that we didn't do it at that time, because we were not so conscious and aware of the climate resiliency component. So I think that the fact that the current design recognizes the 2070, I think the 2070 sea level and climate considerations of that year of 2070 as the base year, I think is a really good thing. But we should take this with some urgency, and I think that I want to make sure that we don't lose momentum. And so we're prepared to make that commitment of funding the comprehensive planning that people have called for and we recognize is needed. But again, with the contingent on the state, and with your leadership and the leadership of Senator Collins and Representative Beal, and hopefully and I'm sure Councillor Fitzgerald, I hope that we can keep this process moving.
Thank you both. Is there other discussion from commission members? Other comments from commission members?
Yes, Haley from Senator Collins. I have a few comments. We just like to put on the record to amend P Circle. It should be Pachuska Circle after Sergeant Alexander F. Pachuska. It's a memorial circle. So he wants to make sure that's corrected in the final version. I also want to mention that in this year's budget, once it's passed, we have the extension for the commission until June 1st of 2026. So if we, don't vote today, we do have until June of 2026. And then just a clarifying question, does this plan remove lanes of traffic on both sides of Morrissey and making bike lanes?
Ethan, you want to answer that one?
Yes, the general concept design through the corridor does generally remove one of the. So there are 3 lanes each direction. It does generally remove 1 lane in each direction. The removal of that lane isn't tied to the bike lane per se. Bike lanes are part of the infrastructure we design. There is space for both. It's more about right sizing the lanes. So it's not a trade-off of we can only put in a bike lane or a general purpose lane. The bike lanes are there to provide additional multimodal transportation. The lane reductions were more to manage the input to the intersections along the corridor.
Okay, just on the map, because I know how in the study it has that orange line in the key. It says plan changes to bicycle facilities along. Could you just explain what, I mean, obviously I know what bicycle facilities are, but it's just the key is a little bit confusing. Because then it's shared use path, bike lane, cycle track, separation, bike lane, bicycle pedestrian priority.
I apologize. I don't know what it is you're looking at specifically. I don't.
It's the latest draft.
Okay.
On page 51.
Okay, if you can just hold tight real quick, I can bring that up. And that is numbered page 51 versus PDF one. Okay.
Oh, sorry, it might be 52 on the thing.
Okay. Understood. Okay, I see. So on that map, so is this figure 2-30 gaps in bicycling infrastructure?
This one's 2-29.
29, the one before. Yeah, you're right, different page. Okay, so if you could ask the question again, I now have the legend in front of me.
Could you just explain in the key, like the map key, what like plan changes to bicycle facilities versus shared use versus bike lane, because they all seem the same to me. And versus
Okay,
cycle.
I see what you mean. Yes.
Yeah, I just don't understand like what each one,
So-
I can Google them, but they don't make sense.
Yeah, no problem. So figure 2-29 in the final report actually shows existing and future. So it's a mixture of what's already there. The planned changes means that there might be a wide shoulder or a striped bike lane, and they're going to be putting in separation. A shared use path is typically off street. A bike lane is on street, typically. And bike lane is usually on the roadway with no separation. A cycle track is typically separated, and then bicycle pedestrian priority roadway is often separated but offset from the roadway. So I think you're asking specifically about planned changes to bicycle facilities?
Yes, thank you. And then there's
So-
nothing for bicycle pedestrian priority roadway, right? Because I don't see any pink on
See
the map.
that in this map. So this is a collection of not necessarily what we developed from the study. What we do as part of the study process is due diligence to collect all the existing data information out there. So a lot of this information is from either other plans, the city of Boston, what they're doing with their future bike infrastructure. It could be DCR, it could be ours. So the along Morrissey is what the process that we're doing. That's actually what's tied to us. Everything else is more just due diligence of information that's in this map.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I hope that wasn't too long-winded.
No, thank you. And then the last comment from Senator Collins, he believes that since the work is along the shoreline, it calls for it to be integrated into the Greenway extension. Just wants to put that on the record.
Understood.
Thank you. Other commission members, any discussion or comments? Seeing and hearing none. Ethan, I think it's now time for public comment, isn't it?
Yes, it is, David. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So Ethan, you're gonna read these slides and then you're gonna call on people from the public, or is that my job?
We will be calling people.
Okay, so take it away, Ethan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, so this is just an instructional slide for those out there watching the webinar. In order to submit your questions and comments, use the Q&A button on your screen. It looks like we do have one chat question already. Please raise your hand to be unmuted if you'd like to have a verbal question to us. Please state your name before the question for the record, please. Please share only one question at a time. If you could limit it to 2 minutes so we can allow others to participate. We can also circle back, but we want to make sure we give everybody a chance first. And if you want to ask a question via phone, dial *9 and the moderator will call out the last digits of your phone number, but I don't believe we have anybody on the line with just a phone number. No, we don't. So I will turn it over to Michaela to moderate.
Great. Thank you, Ethan. Yes, that's right. It is now time to get into the Q&A portion of tonight's meeting. As Ethan just went over, please use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen to participate verbally. You will then be recognized and you'll receive a notification on your screen to unmute. Please note that that notification will show up on your primary Zoom screen just in case other windows may be open, such as the Q&A box. And so right now, I will open up the floor for comments from any elected officials or members of staff on the call. I do see a raised hand from Councillor Fitzgerald's designee, Maria Lyons. You should be able to unmute.
Hello, just for the record, I'm answering for myself now, not Councilor Fitzgerald. Is that all right?
That sounds good.
All right. I wanted to mention, I noticed at the beginning you had in there about the Conley Street entrance in and out that we asked to be put in, the Port Norfolk. I'm Maria Lyons from Port Norfolk. I'm encouraged by that. I hope you will do that because that is vitally important to our community to have that Conley Street entrance and exit across Morrissey Boulevard connecting Pope's Hill to Port Norfolk. I also want to back up with City Councilor Fitzgerald said about the 3 lanes and the bike lane. It seems to be redundant to have the lanes on the road as well as the lane coming from the Neponset Greenway, which would be safer. So I do support him in that. I don't understand why you need to have bike lanes on Morrissey Boulevard when you're going to have a beautiful bike path along the side. Also, recently, just a few days ago, I was at a Zoom meeting with the Army Corps of Engineer on climate resiliency in Dorchester with Jeff Herzog was his name, from the Army Corps of Engineers. And they showed us the plans that the Army Corps of Engineers has designed to protect Dorchester from flooding. And some of it is similar to Climate Ready Boston, some of it is not. But I wanted to mention the plans around the Morrissey Boulevard were just to put in a berm here and there where it was needed, naturalized berms. He even said you could put the bike path on the top of the one along the ocean, and then a few other places would need berms and so forth. And that's it. And that alone, I'm sure, will be expensive. Your plan has all these bells and whistles that'll take a fortune of money to complete. Perhaps you can start with the berms like the Army Corps of Engineer is suggesting. I don't know if you've seen that yet, but if you haven't, please look at it. Start there, stop the flooding, which was the original intent of the whole Morrissey Commission, to stop the flooding on the boulevard. And then maybe as years goes on, if the need arises, you put in all these bells and whistles that you're adding in that are going to cost a lot of money. So that's my comment. Please look at what the Army Corps of Engineer has said, and do that first before you try to get enough money for a fortune. Even in planning, it's going to be a fortune. Just plan the berms, get that done, stop the flooding, and then later on worry about everything else. So thank you for letting me comment.
Thank you, Maria. And I have recently been made aware of the U.S. Army Corps plans and working with the city on that right now.
Yes, thank you, Maria. And we appreciate all comments and questions that are coming in. As Ethan mentioned, there's one in the chat currently, a question from Jeff that reads, how many feet does Morrissey need to be raised by, and is the floodgate being made functional to provide flood resiliency to the Malibu Beach, Savin Hill community?
So I can take that one. So it varies slightly. It's really the central section that is the low point in the corridor, and it varies from about 15 or 16 feet in the year 2070 if you were to provide full protection along with a berm or a raised Morrissey Boulevard. And as far as the floodgate being made functional, that's still as part of the feasibility study. We looked at a few options, but it still needs to be further fleshed out as part of project development. But certainly we've heard a lot about the impacts or potential impacts as well as benefits to the Malibu Beach area, Savin Hill community. So it's fully documented in our public comments, and as well as in our findings and in our work. So that is something that's definitely going to be carried forward as part of the process.
Thank you, Ethan, and thank you, Jeff, for the question. And again, thank you all for joining us this evening for this meeting. We appreciate it. Again, if you have any comments or questions, please use the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen to raise your virtual hand. And please note that after you are recognized, you'll receive a notification on your screen to unmute at that time, and that will show up on your main Zoom screen just in case the Q&A box is open as well. We have a comment in the Q&A from Andrew who says, I just wanted to state that the commission has done a spectacular job. I hope you folks continue to engage with our community as the process continues. Thank you. So thank you, Andrew, for your participation and everyone's participation throughout this process. We appreciate you for being here. I next see a raised hand from Cassie on the commission.
Hi, I'm not asking for Dan Hunt. It's a personal question, but I'm excited for the multimodal transport system that's going in on Morrissey. Love a bike lane. But for the comprehensive planning system recommended by the City of Boston, will there be a cumulative impact assessment for the neighborhood? And then during construction or before construction, Will there be any system of life cycle analysis for the construction material and the embodied carbon? That's just anyone can answer, I think. Thank you.
So to the first question about what the scope of work would be for the city, I personally can't speak to that. I don't know if Kairos wants to.
Yeah, yes. So the short answer is yes, that I think one of the initial scope that the planning study that the city is prepared to take on would be to actually ensure that there is a review and accounting of all the projects that have been either approved or in the approval process, and to make sure that we can bring that all together so that we can do the kind of assessment of this cumulative impact, and to make sure that the roadway that's being designed is capable of serving the future state of Dorchester and Savin Hill and Columbia Point, and not sort of be to make sure that that's accounted for. So and we're prepared to develop the scope further, as I said, contingent on the fact that that the state advances this roadway design for Morrissey Boulevard and Cage Circle.
Thank you. Please continue to type in any comments or questions you might have using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And please also continue to use the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen as well to share any comments or questions verbally. And so with that, I do see a raised hand from Dawn. You should now have a notification on your screen to unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so Dawn Walsh, I'm active in the Columbia Savin Hill Civic Association. Let me give you my version of the history of this. In 2019, the Civic Association did a very simple thing. We listened to all the developers that came to us and told us what they were planning. They had serious plan. They had either ownership or they had rights to the land, and it added up to 10,000 housing units. We were totally shocked. 10,000 housing units means we're going to have 24,000 new neighbors. Now, what we did as a civic association, maybe atypical for civic associations, we did not oppose it. What we said was it has to be built in the right place and it has to be planned comprehensively. And again, this is my interpretation that our electeds, Nick Collins, Dan Hunt, Dave Beal, and Frank Baker listened to us, and they put into the state legislature that a commission from Morrissey Commission would be formed to address how 10,000 housing units plus literally millions of commercial space are going to be planned and incorporated. So I felt really good about that. I said, that's great. We're going to have a plan, It's been a disgrace. It's been an absolute disgrace that what has happened. There's been no comprehensive planning. Not only that, the Kosciuszko Circle has been kicked out of the idea of this comprehensive planning. You're not even doing it. And then you went back and you took a plan from years ago that Mayor Marty Walsh and Governor Charlie Baker said it doesn't make sense to take 6 lanes on Morrissey Boulevard and drop them back to 4, and they killed it. And here's what you've done. So the only thing of significance I see you guys have done is you have gone back to a plan that has already been was already dismissed by the mayor at the time and the governor at the time. So if my opinion is you guys should not be allowed to say, okay, we're done. The whole thing. You're not done. You simply have not done your job. I liked very much what Cairo Shen had to say earlier of the city of Boston wants to step up and be responsible for comprehensive planning from in this area. I absolutely support that because from what I've seen, the state doesn't do comprehensive planning, period. Absolutely not. So anyways, that's my, sorry about this, but that's my, you know, so I'm obviously not happy about what the state's done or what you're doing. And and you should not be allowed to say, okay, we accept what you've done and thank you for your job. No, you haven't done what you're supposed to do. Continue on and change and do what you're supposed to do and work more with the city to get this comprehensive planning so that the much needed housing will actually happen and it'll be integrated into the neighborhood in a way that makes sense. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Don.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments, and we appreciate everyone's comments and questions and feedback throughout this process, not just for tonight, but throughout this entire study process. I don't see any new questions or comments in the Q&A box or any raised hands at this time. But again, I'd like to remind everyone, if you have any comments or questions, please continue to use the Q&A box to share any written comments or questions, or use your virtual hand to raise your hand. And I see a raised hand from Haley.
Hey, sorry, another comment from Senator Collins. He believes that the commission should be fully endorsed by the Dorchester Bay, Columbia Point, and Finnegan Boston Park water and sewer infrastructure plan. So I just want that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we can move on, Michaela, to.
I see a raised hand from Bill. You should have a notification on your screen to unmute.
Yes, my name is Bill Walczak. From the Columbia Savin Hill Civic Association. Like Don Walsh, I am happy to have heard Cairo Shen talk about comprehensive planning that would take into consideration not just Morrissey Boulevard, but other main streets, other neighborhoods, need for open space, transportation, infrastructure, and other things. I think that's a very important element of it. I am also disappointed that the Morrissey Commission ignored Kosciuszko Circle, which was initially intended to be part of it, and also the goals of the commission, which was to really look at the overall scope of what needs to be happening in this particular section of Massachusetts, not just the roadway on it. I understand that the roadway issue is a Department of Transportation issue, but it's a much bigger issue for the people who actually live right next to it. And right now we have a gigantic expressway on one side, and we have essentially a highway, not a parkway, on the other side. So overall, I hope that the commission will expand into looking at these other things and try to bring it together and work with the community on figuring out, and the city, and figuring out what needs to happen over the next year or so as we try to figure out how to deal with these issues.
Thank you for your comments, Bill. We appreciate it, and we appreciate all of the comments and questions and feedback that we received. I don't see any additional raised hands or questions or comments in the Q&A box at this time. But Ethan and Chair, I will hand it over to you at this time.
Thank you, Michaela. Ethan, what's next?
Advanced slide, Patrick, please. So David, Mr. Chairman, I turn it over to you for vote of the final report submission to legislature as required by the legislation.
Okay. So is there a motion and a second to submit this report to the legislature? If so, please state your name for the record when making the motions.
I guess prior to a motion, since there isn't one, I think I've said this at almost every meeting, but the dropping a lane in the 2016 DCR 25% design incorporated multiple U-turns, including for Savin Hill going northbound and at multiple other locations. And, you know, continue to have concerns and recognize the kind of conflict between having a parkway while at the same time incorporating and anticipating future design as Don and Kairos have outlined. So I continue to have those concerns, which I think can be addressed at a further larger process, period. And, you know, setting that aside would just complement the DCR and MassDOT as the lead on this by the amount of professionalism, the amount of planning and time from staff and the general public that have been to many of these meetings, and just appreciate the level of, again, the level of professionalism and the product at the end of the day, just the amount of design. Just want to say thank you for that. And again, hope that as this continues through the process, and it was great to have everyone kind of come together to really foster that communication, but hope as the process continues that we'll continue to look at the ability of multiple U-turns to be incorporated in a future design, and we'll advocate along with my colleagues to try and get the administration and whatever funding is out there to keep continuing the design process and listening to folks. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Chris Osgood.
This sort of just building on the representative's point, the vote that you are asking to be taken, is that is not a confirmation of all the design details that are in this report. It is essentially an encouragement for MassDOT and DCR to take the next step of design, including the public feedback, which is given already, including the public feedback here tonight. Is that right? Or how should we be thinking
So
about this?
I think it's fair to say what we're trying to do is you know, we've done all this planning work, and our goal is to now move into implementation, which will take all of this planning work and all the comments made at all of our public meetings and start a design process, right? But before we can start a design process, we need to conclude the planning process. We're trying to conclude the planning process. And I should just note for the record that if and when the city is ready to start their comprehensive planning that Kairos mentioned, if you want MassDOT or DCR participation, we will figure out who from the Commonwealth should come to all of your meetings. We're not walking away from that part. We just don't, you know, it doesn't make sense to MassDOT that MassDOT would be in charge of comprehensive city planning. Kairos.
Thank you. I have actually a question related to the one area that I think every commenter touched on, is that the report, while it has many positive aspects and design proposals, the one area where there is still a complete lack of coordination is with the Kosciuszko Circle design. My concern is that if the vote is to support, to advance this report, but the report does not have a coordinated Kosciuszko Circle design with the rest of Morrissey Boulevard, what's the implication of that? That the commission, and for those who are here, are voting to support this lack of coordination? Can you clarify? Because I think the general, you know, the majority of the Morrissey Boulevard designs, I think, have been generally well received. I think you have received and we have made public comments in our comment letter. But this lack of consistency with Kosciuszko Circle is of concern. And I'm concerned that if we actually take the vote, then there is, that DOT and DCR would advance the work, the next phase of both of these portions of the roadway design without the kind of coordination that actually this court. So aside from comprehensive planning, the other important role of this commission is to coordinate DCR work with DOT work and to make sure that they are consistent and actually supportive of each other rather than in contradiction.
Yeah, so K Circle is currently in design development by MassDOT. Beads Bridge is currently in design development by MassDOT. As I stated earlier today, we will put Morrissey Boulevard into design development by MassDOT. So what I can tell you is that coordination will happen because MassDOT is ultimately responsible for all three of these projects, right? It's not MassDOT doesn't.
I can jump in if you want.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Representative Hunt.
Yeah, so just for a point of clarification, and your point is well taken. And so absent of this commission, you would have a Morrissey Boulevard design, you would have a Beads Bridge design, you would have a K Circle design, and a Bay City design, and the multiple other properties that are before your charge, all in silos. The purpose of this commission was to bring all of the parties along with the community together in order to make sure that everyone knew what all of those processes were going through. Mm-hmm. The other part of that is that this commission is a legislatively mandated commission with Senator Collins taking the lead, David Beal and I working through that process. Some commissions are better than others. Some have a group that meets once or twice, delivers a report that may be 2 or 3 pages to the legislature, and it sits in a file. This process has been extremely robust, and all of the things that have been discussed will still be on the table. So going forward, this recommendation or this report will just be finalizing what was legislatively mandated by MassDOT and DCR. And then the other entities were included to make sure that you had a voice, which normally you would not. And then the next step would be that MassDOT DCR starts off and kicks off their additional plan, or starts off their original planning with the edification of all of the work of the last 2 years, the DCR planning from 2015 and everything else, and work with all of the other parties. So this is in no way, it's the opposite of the intimation or the feeling you might have in that, this is the plan and that's what we're going for. This is the vote today is to close the commission, finalize the report. That said, everything is still on the table, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone else on the call, but DCR in conjunction with MassDOT, if they are the person that actually builds it, like for instance, sidebar, the Neponset Bridge was designed by DCR, built by MassDOT, because they had the 2-to-1 and 4-to-1 dollars from the federal government. So nothing that we vote on today precludes any of the things that are in your mind or concern relative to everything that's happening across from BC High on Morrissey or Bay City, and then we also have the K-Circle study and Beats Bridge study all happening at the same time, if that's helpful.
Thank you, Representative. So is there going to be a motion tonight or I mean, I frankly, I don't know what happens if there's not a motion, right?
I'll make a motion to approve the report in order to send it to the legislature, as is the charge of this commission. And a yes vote doesn't necessarily mean that you approve every provision in the report. It just means that the work of this commission is complete.
Yes, and again, I can say for the record that we will transition into project development. We will scope a project, put it into project development. We will hire a designer. I can't commit to the schedule that will happen on, but this is let's be done with planning and let's start into design. So there's a motion. Is there a second?
I will second based on the representations and what Representative Dan Hunter just stated, and David, what you just said as well, the explanations as to what the charge of the commission is.
Excellent. So I'm going to call the roll. I'm going to call my own name first, just so I don't forget it. David Moeller, on behalf of MassDOT, I vote yes. Representative Hunt.
Yes.
Councilor Fitzgerald.
Yes, he said yes.
Thank you. Senator Collins.
Senator Collins is a no, just as the study shows. Again, he just wants to put on the record that it's a no because any study that shows losing any lanes, whether it's for bike lanes or extending the road, he thinks that the bikes should be on the coastline. And again, we fully understand how the process works, that we'll have community process on this, but we can't full-heartedly send this study knowing that the suggested lanes being lost. Thank you. And we do have until 2026 if we wanted to see other options. Thank you.
Thank you. David Mullen.
Yes.
Frank Baker. Commissioner Arrigo.
Yes.
Chris Osgood.
Yes.
Cairo Shen.
Yes.
Thank you all very much. I really do appreciate both the effort and work put in by the commission's members and by the staff, and most importantly by the public. Thank you so much, and we will be back out here once we start design. Everybody have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Good night.